Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Sophie was holding her coffee cup like it was a trophy after a marathon. She took a deep breath, looked around, and thought to herself, "All right, coffee secured. Now I just need to get out without causing an accident." She took 2 steps, and on the third, fate decided to play a trick. Her heel caught on the raised corner of the carpet like a ninja trap. The world spun. The cup shook. Her heart raced. In a desperate reflex, she reached out for something, anything, to grab onto. Unfortunately, she found a man's pants. The sound of the button popping off was loud and clear, and in less than a second, the pants dropped straight to the man's ankles. When she looked, she saw her fingers tightly holding the waistband of a pair of dress pants. She blinked. Yes, black underwear, loose belt, bare legs, and right in front of her, standing like a museum statue, was him, Ethan Brooks. CEO, partner, elegant, powerful, and now without pants. "What are you doing, you crazy woman?" Ethan shouted, jumping back while trying to cover himself with his hands. The room froze. One employee dropped the cookie she had in her mouth. An intern crossed himself. Another whispered a muffled, "Oh no." Sophie froze, her hand still on his waistband, her eyes wide open, her coffee shaking in her other hand. I tripped. Her voice came out so high it sounded like a whistle. "It was the carpet, I swear. I didn't mean to. I didn't even know it was pants." "And what did you think it was? A curtain?" Ethan yelled, holding the waistband and trying to pull the pants back up, his face red. Somewhere between outraged and completely baffled, she tried to let go but lost her balance even more and almost fell right on top of him. "Oh my gosh. Oh no, no, let go. For the love of God, let go." Ethan was backing away, half hopping with the pants still at his ankles. Who holds on to a pair of pants with that kind of determination? Ethan exclaimed, trying to rescue both his dignity and his pants at the same time. She let go of the pants like they were burning hot. "Oh my gosh, I swear I didn't mean to. I'm not crazy, I'm just clumsy." "Really clumsy?" she said, blushing from her forehead down to her neck. Yeah, I noticed. Dear, I'm standing here in my underwear in the middle of the office," he answered, bending down to pull his pants up at Olympic speed. Sophie tried to hide behind her coffee cup, but there was nowhere to hide. By now, everyone was watching. One of the teen lawyers whispered, "This definitely violates some kind of dress code or sanity clause." The head of HR passed by the door, saw the scene, and with a tired sigh muttered, "I'm going to pretend this is a collective hallucination." Ethan finally zipped up, tightened his belt, and with that dangerous, sarcastic smile, walked over to Sophie. "Let me get this straight. You walk in here, pull my pants down in front of 20 people, and think you're just going to walk out with a sorry and a cup of coffee?" She stammered, almost tripping over her own words. "I'm Sophie, Dr. Nathan's intern, and I just wanted a coffee, and ended up with a scandal," he replied, almost laughing. "Fantastic. You're like an earthquake with an ID badge." The whole room was holding back laughter, but one of the analysts couldn't help it and burst out with a nervous laugh, trying to cover it up with a sip of coffee that almost made him choke. I can clean the carpet, or buy you new pants. I have $18 in my account," Sophie said in total panic. "Oh great, so if I have a gala event this week, I'll just buy a pair of used jeans from the flea market." "Problem solved," Ethan said, laughing. She took a step back, tripped on the same corner of the carpet, and almost fell again, but this time managed to hold on to what was left of her dignity. Barely. Ethan crossed his arms and finished. "Welcome to the office, Sophie. You managed in 2 minutes what no one else could do in 2 years. Leave everyone speechless and almost breathless from laughing so hard." She shook her head. "Totally lost. I'm going to quit. That's the best thing. I saw your underwear. I can't live with that," she blurted, covering her face. "Relax. The underwear survived. My reputation, not so much, but you'll get used to it," he said, now laughing for real. And at that moment, Sophie was sure of 2 things. She had no idea how she was still alive, and this was officially the worst first day in internship history, or maybe the best start to something completely unexpected. If Sophie thought the coffee room disaster would stay in the past, she was deeply mistaken. The next morning, she tried her best to go unnoticed. She walked like she was part of the furniture, avoiding everyone, staring at the floor, holding a folder as if it were a shield against the universe. But the universe had a name and a last name, and it was coming. Well, look who's here. The Pants Destroyer. Ethan's unmistakable voice echoed down the hallway just as she thought she might make it through reception unnoticed. Sophie squinted, pretending she hadn't heard. She picked up her pace. "Hey, hold on there, intern." He caught up to her with that smile, half teasing, half charming that only he could pull off. "Are you running away from me?" She took a deep breath, clutched her badge tightly, and turned around, trying to keep her dignity intact. "Me? Run away? Of course not. I'm just focused," she replied, adjusting her blazer, even though it wasn't out of place. Ethan crossed his arms, tilted his head slightly, and looked at her like she was a tricky puzzle to solve. "Focused, huh? Then be careful not to focus so much that you end up ripping someone's jacket today. Very funny." She rolled her eyes, biting her tongue not to say more. "Don't worry, your pants are safe for today." Ethan tapped his chin, pretending to think, maybe I should get suspenders, just to be safe. The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted their exchange. Nathan appeared, carrying a stack of folders. He noticed the scene and couldn't resist. "Here he comes," Nathan said, looking from Sophie to Ethan. "Careful, Sophie. Word is when his pants fell, his ego went down with them." Sophie couldn't hold back her laughter. Ethan raised an eyebrow, pretending to be offended. "Very funny, Nathan, very." Then he turned to Sophie. "See? I'm the victim here." She smiled as she adjusted the papers in her hands. "If you want, I can start a fundraiser to buy you a stronger belt, and I can set up warning cones around the office to protect you from those killer rugs." Ethan shot back, crossing his arms, looking her up and down, clearly enjoying himself. Nathan shook his head, trying not to laugh. "My goodness, you two are like a walking sitcom." "Wrong," Ethan replied. "I'm the victim in this sitcom. She's the bringer of chaos." Sophie gave him an ironic smile. "Chaos? Me? Oh no, I'm pure peace and quiet." "Peace?" He let out a short laugh. "You've got the subtlety of a hurricane. Intern." She put her hands on her hips, staring him down. "And you've got an ego the size of this building. I'd say we're pretty even." For a few seconds, the two stood in silence, staring at each other like this verbal sparring was some kind of sport. Whoever blinked first would lose. Nathan walked between them, giving them both a light pat on the shoulder. All right, let's get to work before the boss shows up in tears." He paused, realizing his choice of words, and added, "Well, probably best not to use the word tear right now." Ethan shook his head, amused, and walked down the hall. But of course, not without one last remark. "Careful, Sophie, I'm watching you from now on. Rugs, chairs, ties, everything's a risk." She crossed her arms and shot back without even thinking. "Perfect. And I'm watching too, especially the seams on your pants." His smile widened, and for a moment, it felt like this wasn't just playful teasing anymore. There was something more there. Sophie took a deep breath, shook her head, and turned to follow Nathan. They stepped into the office, and only once the door closed behind them did she let out, "Seriously, Nathan, is this normal? Is he always like this?" Nathan dropped the folders on the table, pulled out his chair, and sat down. "With everyone? No, only when someone does something truly unforgettable, like pulling his pants off in front of 20 people. She covered her face, embarrassed. "I'm going to be remembered for that forever, aren't I?" "Oh, without a doubt," he said, laughing. "But you know what? I think he deserved it. Ethan's the kind of guy who thinks the world revolves around him. And you," Nathan looked at her, smiling. "You were like a storm he never saw coming." Sophie took a deep breath, organized the papers on the table, and smiled. "Well, then he better get ready, because this storm has a name, and it's Sophie." On the other side of the wall, Ethan adjusted his tie, looking out the window of his office, wearing a different kind of smile. "Sophie," he repeated quietly, almost without realizing it, that intern, and at that moment, even if he'd never admit it, it was already clear that she was anything but someone easy to ignore. The next few days followed a curious pattern. Every time Sophie thought she'd get a moment of peace, Ethan would show up with a new joke, a sarcastic comment, or simply that half smile she was already starting to recognize as his teasing smile. But that morning, the atmosphere at the office was different. The sound of hurried heels, urgent phone calls, and hushed conversations filled the air with tension. Even the usual smell of coffee seemed less welcoming. Sophie straightened the papers on Nathan's desk, noticing his expression was more serious than usual. "Did something happen?" she asked, frowning. Nathan took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair. "Oh, something definitely happened. The office is on fire." Not literally, but almost. Before she could ask what he meant, the conference room door flew open, and who walked in? Of course, Ethan, wearing a flawless suit, face tight and clearly not happy. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, pacing back and forth. Years handling this client, and now this? Right behind him came the firm's managing partner, the feared Mr. Thompson, a man of few words. But when he spoke, the whole building listened. "Ethan," his voice was steady. The client was clear. "He doesn't want you on the case anymore." Ethan turned, stunned. "That makes no sense. I know that contract backwards and forwards." "Mr. Thompson crossed his arms. "Exactly. And even so, you missed a detail that cost us his trust." Sophie and Nathan exchanged a glance. She whispered, "This sounds serious." Nathan replied in the same tone, "That's because it is." The partner continued, straight to the point. "The client wants a new attorney, and from now on, the person handling the case." He paused, looking straight at Nathan. "Is you Nathan?" Ethan stood frozen. "What?" "You heard me. The case is yours now, and of course, put your own team together." Nathan took a deep breath, managing his surprise. "Understood, sir. I'll take care of it." The partner nodded and left the room, leaving behind a heavy silence. Ethan needed a moment to process. When he finally turned around, he saw Sophie standing there with a look of surprise and discomfort, holding a folder like a shield. "No," he said, shaking his head and rubbing his chin. "This isn't happening." Nathan, half smiling, patted Sophie on the back. "Oh, it's happening. You're officially on the team now, Sophie." Her eyes widened. "Me? Really? Really?" He confirmed. "I need someone organized, focused, and not afraid to handle tough situations." Ethan crossed his arms, eyeing the two of them. "Oh, sure. Because nothing says legal excellence like hiring the woman who once pulled someone's pants down by accident." Sophie took a breath, adjusted her blazer, and replied without missing a beat. "Don't worry. In this case, the only thing I plan to bring down are arguments." Nathan held back a laugh. "That was a good one." Ethan ran a hand over his face, clearly frustrated. "This is insane. I've been working on this case for months. I know every clause, every detail, and now you think you can just walk in, sit down, and fix everything." Nathan, staying calm, answered, "Actually, that's exactly what we're going to do." Sophie tried not to smile, but it was impossible. Seeing Ethan, usually so confident, lose his composure like that was almost therapeutic. "Oh, and just so you know," Nathan added, "the client doesn't want your name connected to the case anymore, so Ethan, better stay out of it." Ethan took a sharp breath, jaw tight. "Great. Perfect. Wonderful." He turned to Sophie. "But just so you know, intern. This," he pointed to her. Then to Nathan. Then back again. "This won't end well." She crossed her arms, steady gaze locked on his. "For me, it's already off to a great start." Ethan blinked, surprised. For a moment, he had no comeback, a rare thing, very rare. "Well, if you'll excuse me," he straightened his tie, pretending to be in control. "I have more productive things to do than watch this circus burn." He walked out confidently, but at the door, he paused, looked back, and added, "Just try not to trip over your own ego." "Intern." Sophie smiled calmly. "Don't worry, and you be careful with your buttons." Nathan, already seated at his desk, shook his head. "Oh boy. This is going to be a lot of fun." And little did they know, that case wouldn't just change the direction of the firm. It was going to change absolutely everything in their lives. The office was still buzzing, papers printing, lawyers rushing down hallways with thick folders, phones ringing non-stop. Sophie, sitting in Nathan's office, slowly spun in her chair, eyeing the growing pile of folders beside the desk like a small mountain. "Okay. Where do I start?" she asked, tucking her hair behind her ear. Nathan let out a sigh, adjusting in his chair. "This case is a real ticking time bomb, Sophie. And guess what? Now it's in our hands." She grabbed a random folder, opened it, and started reading, frowning after just a few pages. "Wow, there's so much here." "This is the acquisition process for a hotel chain," he explained, pointing to some contracts spread out on the table. "It's a huge deal, and even the smallest mistake could cost millions." Sophie bit her lower lip, studying the documents. Her eyes scanned through the clauses, trying to absorb every detail. Nathan watched her with a half smile. "Relax. Take your time. You don't have to understand everything at once." But Sophie didn't answer. Her furrowed brow showed she was completely focused on those papers. Minutes passed, then hours. She read, scribbled notes, pulled other documents, made quick annotations, checked dates, signatures, terms, until suddenly something caught her attention. "Wait a second," she murmured, pulling out an older sheet. She read it again, went back to another document, compared clauses, grabbed a highlighter, circled one item, then underlined another. Nathan noticed the sudden silence. "Is everything okay over there?" Maybe yes, or maybe no," she answered, chewing on the pen cap. "Tell me something. This contract here," she lifted the paper. "It's tied to the franchise agreement, right?" "That's right," Nathan confirmed. "Why?" She quickly flipped through another document, pointing to a specific clause. "So, if it's tied, this doesn't make sense." "Take a look." Nathan stood up, walked over to her, picked up the paper, and as he read, his eyebrows slowly started to rise. "No, that can't be," he said, pulling out another folder and flipping through it. This? Sophie grabbed another sheet, almost tripping over her own words. "Here, look at this clause. It completely contradicts what's in the master agreement. If this goes to court, the client loses." Nathan stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he set the papers down, ran a hand through his hair, and took a deep breath. "Sophie, this is a massive mistake." She raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Like Grand Canyon size? More like black hole size," he answered, still in disbelief. "If the client found out, our reputation would be done for. And if the other party found out," she added, "it would be a disaster." Nathan pulled out a chair, sat down, and started typing on his laptop. "We need to rework this immediately." And he looked at her, smiling. "You, young lady, just saved the case." Sophie smiled, still not quite believing it. "Really? Really?" he confirmed, nodding. "And you know what the most unbelievable part of all this is? That you're going to promote me and double my salary?" She answered, barely holding back a laugh. "No," he laughed, that Ethan didn't catch this. His name lingered in the air for a few seconds. Nathan shook his head, still surprised. How did he miss something so basic? Maybe because he was too busy fixing his pants instead of reading contracts, Sophie joked with a shrug. Nathan tried to hold back a laugh. Could be. Hours later, the meeting room was full. The client, an elegant gentleman in a perfectly tailored gray suit, sat at the table with a serious expression. Surrounded by assistants and directors, Ethan was there too, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, tense expression, clearly not happy. Senior partner Thompson took his seat at the head of the table. "Well, gentlemen, we're here to discuss the case updates," he said, looking at Nathan. "Go ahead." Nathan stood up, took a deep breath, and began. "After a thorough review of the contracts, we found an inconsistency that could have led to a significant loss." The client immediately widened his eyes. "Inconsistency? What do you mean?" Nathan nodded, keeping calm. "Sophie, please." Everyone turned to look at her. Sophie straightened her papers, took a deep breath, and walked over to the projector. "Basically, sir," she began, projecting the documents on the screen, "there's a clause in the franchise agreement that directly contradicts the acquisition contract. This means, legally, your exclusivity rights could be challenged." The client blinked, surprised. "And this was there from the beginning?" "Yes," she answered, pointing at the documents. "And if it hadn't been corrected, it could have allowed your competitors to file a lawsuit questioning the agreement." Absolute silence. Ethan, still with his arms crossed, clenched his jaw, taking a deep breath. His eyes fixed on her. The client leaned forward at the table, looking directly at Nathan and Sophie. "Did you fix this?" Nathan smiled. "Yes, sir. We reworked the contracts, added legal protection clauses, and adjusted the exclusivity terms." He handed a new folder to the client. "Here are the updated documents." The client flipped through the documents, quickly analyzing as he read. His expression shifted from tense to relieved, then to something close to satisfaction. "Impressive," he said, looking at Thompson. "This is top-notch work." Thompson smiled, pleased. We have the best. The client stood up and shook Nathan's hand. Congratulations. It's an excellent job. Then he turned to Sophie. And you? Are you an intern? She nodded, a bit shy. For now. The man laughed. If you keep this up, you're going to pass a lot of people in this office. Ethan, standing in the corner, let out a heavy sigh. He adjusted his tie, clearly torn between frustration and something he wasn't used to feeling: admiration. Thompson wrapped up the meeting with compliments, promises of future contracts, and that usual feeling of a job well done. As everyone started to leave, Ethan walked over slowly, hands in his pockets, that half-smile on his face. Congratulations, intern, he said, his tone somewhere between sarcastic and sincere. So, do you want my diploma now or later? Sophie crossed her arms, looking him straight in the eye. I'll take it. And if you want, I can also teach you how not to lose a lawsuit. For a couple of seconds, Ethan was speechless. No comeback. Then he let out a short laugh, shaking his head. You are unbelievable. Nathan walked past them, laughing. Ethan, I think you just met your kryptonite. Ethan sighed, tightening his tie. And her name is Sophie. As he walked back to his office, Ethan couldn't wipe that smile off his face. And deep down, even if he didn't want to admit it, he knew that intern was about to turn his life upside down. And this was just the beginning. Ethan adjusted his tie, but this time it wasn't for style, it was nerves. He stood in front of the glass wall of his office, arms crossed, staring outside without actually seeing anything. Ever since the meeting where Sophie, the intern he had underestimated, saved a multi-million-dollar contract, something inside him felt different. A confusing mix of bruised pride, admiration, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of fascination. He shook his head, letting out a sigh. This is getting out of hand, he muttered to himself. Then, suddenly, his eyes landed on the hallway, and there she was, walking with that determined stride, blazer slightly crooked, carrying a folder that looked bigger than she was. Ethan narrowed his eyes, thoughtful. All right, if I can't beat this girl, he crossed his arms, then how about hiring her? Without thinking twice, he grabbed his phone and dialed. Hey, reception. See if intern Sophie can come to my office. No, it's not a problem. Yet, a few minutes later, there were 3 knocks on the door. Come in, he answered, straightening his hair. Sophie opened the door, looking suspicious. You again? She crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. If you're here to complain about my blazer, my shoes, or my existence, save it. I'm busy today. He smiled. Relax, Hurricane. I'm not here to tease you. I'm making you an offer. She blinked, skeptical. An offer? Ethan stood up, walked around the desk, and sat on the edge of it, arms crossed. That's right. Okay, if this is about helping you pick stronger belts, I'm not the right person for that, she replied, barely holding back a smile. No, Ethan took a deep breath. I want you to leave Nathan and come work with me. The silence in the room was almost solid. Sophie blinked several times, as if convinced she'd misheard. I'm sorry. What? You heard me. He flashed that signature half-smile. Work with me. On my team. She held back a laugh, crossing her arms. And why exactly would I do that? Ethan stood up and started pacing, gesturing like he was pitching some brilliant plan. Well, let's see. With me, you'd have access to the best cases, the best opportunities. And he paused, looking right at her. I'll buy you coffee every day. Sophie burst out laughing. Coffee every day? Wow, what an irresistible offer. Okay, fine. 2 coffees. He shot back, trying not to laugh. And I'll let you pick the music that plays in the office. She raised an eyebrow, pretending to think it over. Tempting, but no. Ethan made a face of disbelief. What do you mean, no? Simple. She smiled. Nathan treats me well. He values me. And so far, he hasn't tried to bribe me with coffee. Almost at that exact moment, as if the universe had scripted it, the door opened, and guess who? Nathan. Did someone say my name? He asked, holding a coffee mug in his hand. What's going on in here? Ethan crossed his arms, looking straight at him. Just an honest attempt to steal your brilliant intern. Nathan pretended to think, took a sip of his coffee, and replied, honest. Let me guess. You offered her coffee, didn't you? 2, Ethan corrected, holding up 2 fingers, and music is included. Nathan laughed. Don't fall for it, Sophie. Don't trust this guy. He just wants you around to steal your talent. Or maybe even your heart." Sophie's eyes widened, clearly surprised. "What?" She looked from Nathan to Ethan, completely caught off guard. "Wait, what?" Ethan choked on his own breath. "What? No?" He rubbed his face and shook his head. "Wow, don't be ridiculous, Nathan." Nathan just shrugged, clearly amused. "I'm just saying what I see." Sophie shook her head, placing a hand on her forehead. "This is surreal." Ethan took a deep breath, pulled himself together, and looked her straight in the eye. "All right, let's make this clear," he pointed at her. "I only want to hire you because you're smart, capable, and—" He paused, breathing in again, "frustratingly good at what you do." "Frustratingly?" She raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Wow, that was almost a compliment." He crossed his arms and looked away. "Maybe?" Nathan laughed, leaning on the doorframe. "Told you, the guy's totally lost." "I'm not lost." Ethan shot back, pointing a finger. "I'm just strategically evaluating talent." "Right," Nathan said, still laughing. "And your strategy is offering coffee and a personalized playlist." Ethan sighed. Okay. It might sound small, but—" He pointed again. "What if I told you, Sophie? You'd get direct access to top-tier clients, high-profile cases, and, on top of that," he gave a sly smile, "your very own coffee cabinet?" She pretended to think, pacing around the room. My own coffee cabinet." She put a finger to her chin, "with unlimited pods." "Absolutely," he answered with confidence. Nathan shook his head, laughing. "Look, I could try to compete, but I don't think I've got that kind of persuasion." Sophie took a deep breath, trying not to laugh. "Look, I'll admit it's tempting, but for now, I think I'll stick with Nathan's team." Ethan stroked his chin, looking at her. "You enjoy torturing me, don't you?" She crossed her arms, smiling. "Just a little." Nathan straightened up and opened the door. "All right, folks, this little professional war has been fun, but we've got a contract to finish." Sophie waved as she walked out. "Bye, Ethan. It's been educational." He put his hands in his pockets, shaking his head as he watched her go. "Educational. Yeah, I think I'm learning more than I expected." Once she disappeared down the hall, Nathan looked over at Ethan, trying not to laugh. "Man, let me give you a little advice here." "Here we go," Ethan sighed. Nathan smiled. "If you think you're in control of this situation, I hate to break it to you, but you're not even close." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, I'm starting to realize that." And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Brooks, the firm's most feared, meticulous, and arrogant attorney, realized that maybe, just maybe, he had finally met someone who didn't just challenge his mind, but was starting to challenge his heart. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the meeting room, mixed with the faint scent of polished wood furniture and a good dose of anxiety. Sophie adjusted her blazer for the third time, taking a deep breath. Her hands were sweaty, her leg was bouncing under the table, and her mind kept repeating, "Breathe, Sophie. It's just a meeting, just a client, just one of the most demanding clients this firm has ever seen." At the end of the table sat Mr. Romano, a well-known businessman, owner of an international resort chain, flipping through documents with his usual expression, serious, focused, and impatient. Next to him, two assistants typed furiously, and of course, Ethan was there too. Sitting calmly or pretending to be adjusting his suit, like it was just another normal day. He glanced over at Sophie and, with his trademark smile, whispered, "Nervous? Intern?" She fixed her hair and gripped her pen. "Me? Not at all. This is no big deal." "Right, totally shows," he said, subtly pointing to her slightly trembling hand. "Let's just hope you don't, what's the word, fall apart." She took a deep breath, keeping her cool. "Don't worry, I'm not dropping anything today." Ethan tried to hide a grin but didn't reply. After all, managing partner Thompson walked into the room, closing the door behind him. "Good morning, everyone. Shall we begin?" The meeting moved forward with introductions, technical discussions, contract clauses, and a lot of numbers flying back and forth. Sophie followed everything, taking notes, trying her best to look completely professional, but inside, it was a full-on battle. On one side, focus. On the other, nerves growing by the minute. "All right then," Thompson said, crossing his arms. "We have the final draft of the contract here. We just need to go over the last few points." "Mr." Romano adjusted his glasses, crossed his arms, and replied in that cold and direct tone, "I hope there won't be any mistakes this time." My patience has its limits. Ethan, sitting next to him, flashed that confident smile that seemed built in. Don't worry, everything has been checked down to the smallest detail. Sophie adjusted herself in her chair, pulling the folder closer when she noticed something. Her coffee cup, sitting right on the edge of the table. Better pull it a little closer before. And before she could even finish the thought, her pen slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. In her reflex to grab it, splash her elbow, hit the cup. The coffee flew in slow motion, part of it going straight onto the table, another part splashing onto the papers, and one perfect, precise, laser-focused stream landing right on Mr. Romano's expensive gray sweet jacket. Silence. Total. The kind of silence that hurts. The kind that makes your brain scream, "Run!" Sophie froze, staring at the coffee slowly spreading across the table. Soaking spreadsheets. Printed contracts. And, of course, the client's jacket. Mr. Romano slowly lowered his eyes to his own chest. Ethan's eyes widened, and for 2 seconds, he tried, really tried, to hold back a laugh, but he failed. "Oh, wow," he said, bringing his hand to his mouth, trying to hide it. That was almost artistic. Mr. Romano blinked, stunned, holding his breath, like he was deciding whether to scream or call for help. "Oh my gosh! Oh no! Oh no!" Sophie jumped up, grabbing napkins, trying to wipe it up. It was an accident, I swear. The cup, it slipped. The pen, I. The words tumbled, scrambled, and vanished. "Please, don't move," Mr. Romano said in a voice colder than the Arctic. "Just don't touch me." Ethan coughed, trying to regain composure, but couldn't resist. "Sophie," he crossed his arms. "Are you trying to sabotage the firm? Or is this just a natural talent?" She slowly turned toward him, narrowing her eyes. "You're not helping." Thompson, with his hand on his forehead, took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Sophie, maybe just sit down." She looked at the table, then at the client, then at the soaked papers, and simply wanted to disappear. I'll go get some paper towels." She turned so fast she nearly knocked over her chair on the way out. As she ran from the room, Ethan looked at Thompson and muttered, "She really takes that leave your mark thing seriously, doesn't she?" Thompson took a deep breath, adjusting his tie. "This didn't happen, Mr. Romano was dabbing at his jacket with a napkin, breathing deeply, looking as if he was seriously reconsidering the entire meeting, or maybe his entire life. Sophie came back with rolls of paper towels, wiping the table, the papers, and what was left of her dignity, whispering to herself, "Congratulations, Sophie. You've officially outdone the pants incident." Ethan stood up, grabbed some documents that had stayed dry, straightened them on the table, and, switching completely to that serious tone he used when it was time to fix everything, said, "Mr. Romano, I know this situation was out of the ordinary, to say the least." He crossed his arms, looking him straight in the eye. "But, honestly, if I may, I'd rather have a team that spills coffee out of nerves than a team that spills contracts out of incompetence." The businessman stared, saying nothing. Sophie, not fully understanding where he was going with this, took a deep breath and added, "And, well, speaking of competence, I was reviewing this contract and noticed something that, honestly, no one here had caught." Thompson and Ethan exchanged surprised looks. She pulled out a dry folder, opened it, and pointed to a clause. "Here, item 7B. In the second half-year profit projection, you calculated the profitability using the average occupancy rate from the past 3 years. She pointed again, took a breath. "But that average doesn't reflect the last 6 months, which showed growth. This means you're underestimating your own projection by," she did some quick math, "about 12. Baffinjawu. Romano frowned, grabbed the paper, checked it, then looked at his assistant, who immediately started typing, verifying the numbers. Ethan crossed his arms, holding back a different kind of smile now. Not teasing. Pure surprise. The assistant confirmed. She's right." Romano adjusted his glasses, looking at Sophie with a completely different expression, one that no longer had impatience but interest. "Impressive," he said, straightening his jacket. "How long did it take you to catch that?" She looked at Ethan, then at Thompson. Somewhere between one coffee spill and the next." The businessman couldn't help it. He smiled. "Well, if every disaster came with a solution like that, I guess the world would be a much more efficient place. Ethan smiled, shaking his head. Well, I've always said she's one of a kind. Thompson took a deep breath, shaking his head somewhere between relief and disbelief. Sophie, you really… He couldn't even finish. He just laughed. I don't know whether to promote you or quarantine you far away from anything with liquid. Romano stood up, shook hands with Thompson, with Ethan, and finally with Sophie. If my team had even half the sharp eye you have, we'd be richer than we already are. She chuckled, a bit shy. Well, I also accept commission, just so you know. He laughed. Duly noted. The meeting ended on a light, relaxed note, a total turnaround from the disaster it had started as everyone left, Ethan walked over, crossed his arms, and looked straight at her. You know, I'm starting to think you knock things over on purpose just to seem more human. She raised an eyebrow, holding back a smile. Maybe. It works, doesn't it? He laughed. It does. Very well. And in that exact moment, both of them knew, no matter how much they denied it, argued, or teased each other, something was happening there, something no contract, no matter how well written, could have ever predicted. If anyone had told Sophie that after spilling coffee on the most demanding client in the entire office and still walking out of the meeting to applause, her day would calm down, well, that person would be completely wrong. Because right then, she was racing down the hallways, arms full of contracts, balancing a cup of coffee. Yes, she never learns, and a phone buzzing non-stop. Sophie, Nathan called, stepping out of his office. I need you to take these documents to the 16th floor. Contract office. It's urgent. 16th. Got it, she replied. Adjusting the papers, and be careful with the elevator, the coffee, gravity. She cut him off as she pressed the elevator button. Relax. Nothing is going wrong today. The elevator dinged, the doors opened, and of course, guess who was inside? Ethan, perfect suit, tie perfectly in place, leaning casually against the wall, holding a folder, and wearing that smile, that half-smile that said, guess who's about to mess with you for the next few minutes? Well, the contract destroyer, he commented, raising an eyebrow. And carrying coffee again? You're brave. She held back a laugh, stepped in, and pressed 16. Yeah, some people say I'm fearless. Others say I'm a walking disaster. I'd say a little bit of both, he replied, crossing his arms. And where are you off to with all that paperwork? Saving the world, or at least the contract department? She smiled, adjusting the papers. You escaped my own meeting. He sighed. 2 hours of a client arguing about PowerPoint fonts. Her eyes widened as she held back a laugh. Wow, that should definitely be classified as psychological torture. The elevator started to move smoothly. A few seconds of silence followed, but it was that kind of silence, the weird one, full of things unsaid until a flicker in the lights, a loud click, and the elevator stopped. The lights switched to emergency mode, dimmer now, and the cabin stood absolutely still between floors. Sophie's eyes went wide. She looked at the panel. Nothing. Blinking. Blank. No. She started pressing buttons. Come on. Up. Down. Anything. Ethan picked up the intercom control. Static. More static. Then a muffled voice finally replied. We've had an electrical failure. A few elevators stopped. Maintenance is on the way. Ethan sighed, crossing his arms. Oh, perfect. We're stuck. Sophie took a deep breath, leaning against the wall. Okay, stay calm. This will be quick. Of course, he replied, straightening his tie. 10, maybe 15 minutes max, he added, glancing at the ceiling. Unless it's like that time last year they were stuck for 2 hours. 2 hours? Sophie almost spilled her coffee. You're joking. Hopefully, he answered with a crooked smile. But I don't think I am. She breathed in deeply, trying not to panic. All right, it's fine. We're fine. She set the papers on the floor, straightened her hair. It's just an elevator. Stopped. With you in it. She glanced at him, pretending to panic. Worst combo possible. Hey, Ethan put his hand on his chest, pretending to be offended. I am excellent company. She crossed her arms, looking him straight in the eye. That is debatable. The two stared at each other for a few seconds, the corner of their mouths starting to curl into smiles. Slowly, like this teasing had become their favorite game, Ethan took a deep breath, leaning against the side rail of the elevator. You know, it's funny. What is? She asked, adjusting the papers on the floor. "That you're the only person in this office who doesn't back down from me," he said, looking directly at her. "That is rare, very rare." She blinked, caught somewhere between surprised and disarmed. "And you're the only person who can make me nervous and at the same time make me laugh." He smiled. "See? Told you. Great company." They both laughed, and for a few seconds, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't just teasing anymore. It wasn't just humor. It was something more. Ethan looked up at the ceiling, crossed his arms, and took a deep breath. "You know, I'm not really like this." "Like what?" she asked, frowning. "This guy, you know," he said, staring off. "Always putting on a show, always building walls." She adjusted herself and sat down on the elevator floor, crossing her legs. "And why are you like that?" It took a deep breath. "My father," he said plainly. "I grew up hearing that being the best was the only option, that showing weakness meant losing." Sophie stayed quiet, watching, really listening. "So I became that guy," he went on, looking down at his hand. "The guy who doesn't mess up, who doesn't allow himself to mess up, who can't," he made air quotes, "fail." She shook her head, resting her chin in her hand. "Ethan, you know that's not really living, right?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Lately, I'm starting to see that." Silence filled the space again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt intimate. Sophie smiled, looking at him. "You know, behind that suit, that tie, that arrogant lawyer face, there's actually a pretty interesting human being." He raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Interesting, who?" "Yeah," she replied, biting her lower lip, trying not to smile. "Annoyingly interesting." Ethan moved a little closer, kneeling down so he was at her level. "And you, intern, you're more than I expected." Their eyes met, and in that exact moment, there was no stuck elevator, no office, no contracts, just them. He leaned in slowly. She didn't move, not forward, not back, just stayed there, breathing, watching. The space between them grew smaller. The silence turned electric. Almost. And then the elevator jerked. The lights flickered on. The panel lit up. The doors opened. They jumped, adjusting themselves like nothing had happened. "Oh yeah, it's working again," Ethan said, fixing his tie, trying to look casual. "Yeah, working," Sophie replied quickly, gathering the papers, her face completely red. The security guard at the door looked at them, puzzled. "Everything okay in there?" "All good." They both answered at the same time, practically stepping on each other's words. They walked out together, side by side, without making eye contact, as if what almost happened hadn't happened at all. But they both knew, that from that moment on, nothing would be quite the same. In the days that followed, something different started happening. And it wasn't just in her head. No, definitely not. Nathan, always the keen observer, was the first to notice. "All right, explain something to me," he said, arms crossed, leaning in the doorway. "Since when does Mr. Most Feared Lawyer in the office help interns change printer toner?" Sophie was holding a folder, trying not to laugh, as she watched one of the strangest sights she'd seen in a while. Ethan, crouched down, completely lost, staring at the printer like it was some kind of unsolvable riddle. "I'm not helping," Ethan replied, unsure how to fit a piece he was holding. "I'm just passing through." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Passing through? Right at the moment the printer broke down? Coincidence?" Ethan said, fixing his tie. Even though his shirt sleeves were rolled up and he had black toner ink on his finger, Sophie crossed her arms, amused. "And since when do you know how to change toner?" Ethan held up the piece, looked at her, then at the printer, and said, "Since now." Nathan tried not to laugh. "Right, and I'm an astronaut in my spare time." Ethan sighed, standing up and brushing off his hands, spreading even more ink on his suit jacket. "Okay, fine. Printers aren't exactly my thing." Sophie hugged the folder to her chest, biting her lower lip to hold back a laugh. "And what exactly were you trying to do?" He crossed his arms and looked away. "Just seeing if you needed anything." Nathan grabbed the doorframe, pretending to think, "Right. And this whole seeing if she needs anything thing happens 3 times an hour? Coincidences?" Ethan replied, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. "The world's full of them." Nathan pretended to take notes on his phone. I'm starting a spreadsheet called Ethan's Coincidences." And so, Sophie, trying to stay composed, took a deep breath. "Guys, seriously, the two of you are something else. This is starting to feel like a comedy scene." Ethan adjusted his blazer, cleared his throat, and pointing at the printer, added, "And just for the record, this printer clearly has something personal against me." Nathan had to lean on the wall to keep from laughing. Or maybe it just doesn't want to be an accomplice to your plan. What plan? Ethan shot back. Raising an eyebrow, Nathan shrugged, smiling. "You know, that little plan of yours to keep circling around here like Sophie's personal satellite." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Excuse me?" She looked from Nathan to Ethan and back again, completely surprised, not sure if she should laugh, run, or pretend she hadn't heard a thing. Ethan crossed his arms, straightened his posture, and answered with the most shameless look. "That's pure imagination on your part, Nathan." Nathan crossed his arms too. "Of course, just my imagination. You never show up out of nowhere, never suddenly appear in the file room for no reason. Never, ever come all the way over here just to ask," he made air quotes, "do you need anything?" "I'm helpful," Ethan replied with a grin. "Unlike some people who like making up crazy theories." Sophie shook her head, trying not to laugh. "Okay, this is getting way too entertaining." Meanwhile, the printer was still broken. Ethan looked at it as if the machine were responsible for all this awkwardness. "All right. Well then, Mr. Printer, you're officially fired." Nathan had to lean on the wall to keep from laughing. "Oh boy, are you going to sue the printer now?" Ethan sighed. "No, but I'm considering it." Sophie took a deep breath, crouched down, opened the printer's side panel, and with 2 quick moves, removed the old cartridge, popped in a new one, pressed 2 buttons, and the printer started working again. "All done," she said, standing up and wiping her hands. "Just unlock this part here. And there you go." Ethan stood there for a few seconds in silence, staring at the machine. That's it? That's it," Sophie answered, smiling. Mysteriously, no PhD in mechanical engineering required. Nathan pretended to applaud. Round of applause for Sophie, and even bigger applause for Ethan for his effort. "Thank you very much," Ethan replied, crossing his arms and pretending to be offended. "I'm feeling extremely appreciated." Sophie gathered the papers as the printer finally started spitting them out. "Well, now that the Save the Printer mission is complete, I guess I can get back to work, right?" Ethan adjusted his suit jacket, discreetly wiping the last bit of ink from his hand. "Of course, I was just stopping by to—" He paused, looking at her, "to see if everything was okay." Nathan laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, Ethan, that's pretty obvious. Really obvious." "Obvious to who?" Ethan shot back, raising an eyebrow. Nathan pointed to me, to Sophie, to the intern who just ran past the door, and probably to the printer too. Sophie tried not to laugh. "Guys, seriously, you two are a whole show on your own." Ethan took a deep breath, crossed his arms, and, looking away, said, "I'm not jealous, okay?" Silence. Nathan raised an eyebrow, smiling. "No one said anything about jealousy, Ethan." Sophie's eyes widened as she held back her laughter. "Yeah, nobody said anything." Ethan realized too late what he just said. He ran a hand over his face, shaking his head. "Great. Perfect. This didn't happen." Nathan crossed his arms, laughing. "Oh, it happened. And I'm mentally recording it. Forever." Ethan straightened his tie, trying to recover his composure. "Well then, it's been a pleasure, folks." He pointed toward the door. "I have very important things to do. Extremely important things." Nathan blinked, like checking if Sophie needs anything else. Ethan opened the door, giving Sophie a sideways glance. "Maybe." And he left. Sophie stood there, staring at the open door, trying not to laugh, and said, "Guys, seriously, he's not even trying to hide it anymore, is he?" Nathan took a deep breath, shaking his head, smiling. "No, Sophie, he's not. And honestly, this is getting more interesting by the minute." And it really was. Very much so. The sound of Sophie's heels echoed through the hallway, mixed with the excited buzz of the staff. Since early that morning, the office felt different. People were whispering in corners, glances exchanged, and wherever she walked, knowing smiles appeared, like everyone was in on something except her. She quickened her pace, holding a stack of documents, eyeing each person she passed with suspicion. "Okay, what's going on?" she whispered, adjusting her blazer. "It's like there's a spoiler for my own life, and no one bothered to tell me, and she wasn't wrong." In the main conference room, senior partner Thompson was organizing papers, looking at the partners, attorneys, and interns as they began filling the seats. At the center, a huge screen displayed the quarterly performance report with charts, numbers, and one very curious highlight: Employee of the Month, Sophie Larson. Intern, Ethan, sitting at the end of the table, crossed his arms, trying to hide that half-smile that kept showing up every time her name came up. Nathan, sitting next to him, adjusted his tie, looking curiously at the slide. "This is not common," he commented, frowning. "Not at all," Ethan replied, straightening his shirt sleeve, "but I think it's more than well-deserved." Well, look who's turned into a fan," Nathan shot back, barely holding back a smile. Ethan pretended not to hear, but the smirk at the corner of his mouth said it all. Thompson cleared his throat and stood up. "Good morning, everyone. Let's get started." He pointed at the screen. "As you all know, this last quarter was extremely challenging. But thanks to everyone's dedication, we achieved truly impressive results." The room filled with applause. Thompson continued. "And of course, a few names stood out during this time." He paused dramatically, glancing directly at Sophie, who sat in the back with wide eyes, clearly having no idea what was going on. And to the surprise of some, or maybe not our top highlight, is someone who, despite being an intern, showed a level of commitment, skill, and boldness that left us all impressed. Sophie's eyes got even wider. No, she whispered to herself, sinking into her chair. "This is not happening." Thompson smiled. "Sophie Larson, please stand up." The entire office turned toward her. Applause broke out. Some clapped politely. Others cheered like they were at a concert. Nathan clapped, smiling. "You nailed it." Ethan clapped like anyone else. But the way he was looking at her, it wasn't just a simple congratulations. It was a mix of pride, admiration, and that classic expression of someone thinking, "Yep, now I'm in trouble." Sophie stood up, completely embarrassed, her cheeks burning. "Oh no, guys, really, you don't have to." Thompson continued. Sophie not only saved contracts but spotted mistakes, led analyses that even senior attorneys missed, and he glanced straight at Ethan, was a key player in more than 3 crucial cases. Ethan looked up at the ceiling for a couple of seconds, took a deep breath, as if thinking, "Yep, go ahead, rub it in." Thompson finished. "And for that, I just want to say we are extremely pleased with your work, and yes, we hope to see you here for a very, very long time." Another round of applause. Sophie gave a shy little wave, bit her lower lip, pushed her hair behind her ear, and sat down, shrinking in her chair. "I'm going to disappear. I need to dig a hole and disappear." When the meeting ended, the office turned into something of a social event. Everyone wanted to talk to Sophie, congratulate her, joke around, or throw out comments like, "Wow, someone's famous now. Careful, you'll be a partner soon. Time to negotiate that salary." But what she didn't know was that the boldest comment was still on its way. In the middle of all the buzz, Ethan appeared. Perfect blazer, that signature half-smile, hands in his pockets. He stopped in front of her, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "All right, I think it's time to make this official." She frowned. "Make what official?" He took a deep breath, crossed his arms. "Work with me, directly. Leave Nathan's team and join mine." Silence. Total silence. If there had been chatter, whispers, and little laughs before, now every single eye was on them, watching. Nathan, who was walking over with a coffee in hand, stopped, blinked, looked at the scene, looked at his coffee, then back at the scene, and muttered, mostly to himself, "I knew it, I knew it." Sophie blinked several times, trying to figure out if this was real. "Wait, are you serious?" Ethan nodded, standing his ground. "Serious. Completely serious." He glanced around, noticing all the eyes on them, and added with a little shrug, "Well, since everyone's already listening, yeah, I'm officially making you an offer." Nathan crossed his arms, smiling. "Oh, so that's how it is now? Stealing talent right in broad daylight?" Ethan grinned. "I prefer to call it strategically reallocating talent." Sophie clutched her folder to her chest, looking back and forth between the two of them. "You guys, this is surreal." Nathan stepped closer, standing by her side. "Careful, Sophie. Don't fall for it. Ethan just wants you close to steal your talent, or maybe your heart." The entire office erupted with murmurs, giggles, shoulder taps, and that collective "ooh." Ethan took a deep breath, adjusted his tie, and replied, "Nathan, please." Then he looked straight at Sophie. "Don't listen to him. My offer is serious. I want you on my team. Full salary, bonuses, and your very own coffee capsule drawer." She tried not to laugh, crossing her arms. "Wow, This escalated quickly. Nathan chimed in, smiling. And if you stay on my team, we'll double the coffee capsules. Plus I'll throw in an ergonomic chair. Ethan blinked. I have an ergonomic chair too. Mine has a massage feature. Nathan shot back, trying not to laugh. The whole office burst out laughing, people pretending to work but really watching what looked like a live sitcom unfolding. Sophie took a deep breath, crossed her arms, and looked from one to the other. Wow, so it's official. This has turned into an open competition. Ethan slipped his hands into his pockets, smiling, and just for the record, I played a win. Nathan reached out a hand. We'll see. Brooks, we'll see. She shook her head, holding back a smile. Okay, let me think. Because, honestly, this feels more like an auction than a job offer. Ethan smiled, arms crossed. Take your time. And just for the record, no one on my team gets stuck in elevators anymore. Nathan couldn't help himself. And on my team, the printer never jams. Not anymore. The whole office laughed again. Sophie laughed too, shaking her head. You two are impossible. But deep down, way down, she knew this wasn't just about work anymore. It wasn't just about contracts, coffee, or broken printers. It was about something much bigger. After what became the most talked about scene of the month, also known as the intern auction, the whole office seemed more interested in following this corporate rom-com than actually working. But if anyone seemed truly out of sorts, it was Ethan. Since that public showdown with Nathan, he hadn't quite known how to act. And apparently, his brain didn't either, because in the past few hours, he had done things he never, ever imagined doing, like, for instance, getting 2 coffees instead of 1 and bringing one straight to Sophie's desk. Here, he said, placing the cup on her desk, trying to sound casual. Thought maybe you'd want one. Sophie looked up, raising an eyebrow. You brought me coffee? He adjusted his tie, trying to play it cool. No, I mean, not exactly. I stopped by the cafe, and, well, they gave me 2 by mistake. He scratched the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. So, there was 1 left over. She tried not to laugh. I see. And by any chance, did they also write my name on it? She held up the cup, which read Sophie. Ethan turned red, all the way to his ears. Coincidences happen. She smiled, shaking her head. You're getting pretty good at this, you know. He crossed his arms, looking away. At what? At pretending you're not clearly trying to get my attention. He opened his mouth, then closed it, crossed his arms again, took a deep breath, and said, I am not... okay, maybe a little. Sophie held back a laugh, resting her chin on her hand. Looking straight at him. You're completely lost, aren't you? He sighed, shaking his head. And you love it, don't you? She smiled. A lot. Ethan ran a hand over his face, clearly torn between walking away or staying, and to his own surprise, he stayed. Okay, look. He pulled up a chair and sat down next to her. I'm not good at this. Okay, at what? Talking, she teased. At, he made air quotes. Talking to you. She smiled, sorting the papers on her desk. And why is it different with me? He took a breath. Because... He looked at her, then looked away. Because you throw me completely off balance. Silence for a few seconds. Sophie blinked, surprised, like her brain was checking if she'd really heard that. Wow, she said finally, resting her chin on her hand. That was almost a confession. Ethan rubbed his face. It wasn't. Not exactly. She tried not to laugh. Right, not exactly. Got it. He took a deep breath and crossed his arms. Okay, look, you throw me off. I don't know how to act. I don't know what to say. He looked at her, squinting a little. You know what you're doing to me, don't you? She gave a mischievous smile. I'm starting to figure it out. Ethan shook his head, chuckling even though he tried not to. This is totally insane. I'm one of the most respected lawyers in this office. I've negotiated million-dollar contracts, faced judges, prosecutors, and now, he pointed at her, I can't even finish a sentence when you look at me like that. She raised an eyebrow, resting her chin on her hand. Like how? He took a breath and looked right at her. Like you know that, he bit his lower lip, then exhaled. That you're the one in control here. She smiled, crossing her arms. And am I not? Ethan broke into a wide grin, shaking his head. You are. Completely. For a few seconds, they just looked at each other, no jokes, no sarcasm. Nothing but that look that said, so, now what? He took a deep breath, stood up, adjusted his tie, and blurted out, almost without thinking, "I like you." "Okay." Silence. Total silence. He froze. She froze. The planet quite possibly froze too. "Wait, what?" she asked, eyes wide. "Say that again." He ran a hand over his face, squeezing his eyes shut. "No, that wasn't supposed to come out like that. He took another deep breath, pointed at her. "You make me completely." He waved his hand, searching for the right word. Off balance. She clutched the folder to her chest, holding back both a laugh and her pounding heart. Wow, was that a confession or a system failure? He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck, completely unsure where to hide his face. Maybe a little of both. She took a deep breath, smiling. "So you like me? Is that it?" Ethan put his hands in his pockets, shook his head, smiling. "Yeah, that's it. Intern, I like you." The silence that followed was comfortable, beautiful, full of meaning that no words could really capture. Sophie crossed her arms, looking at him with that smile only she could pull off. "Well, it was about time, wasn't it?" He raised an eyebrow. "Time?" She stood up, grabbed the coffee he had brought her, took a sip, and answered with a smile. "Because I like you too, Ethan." He blinked, completely caught off guard. "Okay. Now I'm the one speechless." She laughed, adjusting her bag strap. "Well, welcome to my world." Ethan smiled, shaking his head, crossing his arms. This is really happening, right?" She took 2 steps toward him, stood on tiptoe, and very close, looked straight into his eyes. "It is, counselor. And honestly," she smiled, "you're completely irresistible when you're flustered." He laughed, shaking his head. "You are impossible." She winked, amused, "And you just fell for it." And as they walked out of the room, side by side, laughing, teasing each other, one thing became very clear to both of them. There, in the middle of lawsuits, contracts, and printers that kept breaking, something much bigger had begun. And this time, even their hearts couldn't argue against it. If someone had told Sophie on the day she first walked into that office that she would one day be side by side with Ethan Brooks, not just as a future lawyer but as a partner, she probably would have laughed loudly, very loudly. But there she was, Idaho badge swinging, folders in hand, heels clicking hurriedly down the hallway with Ethan beside her, both talking non-stop about deadlines, clauses, hearings, and, in the middle of it all, stealing glances and smiles that neither of them could hide anymore. "Okay," Ethan said, adjusting his tie, looking at her. "So, just to be clear, you officially agreed to work with me." She tried not to laugh. "Yes, official," he confirmed, crossing his arms and walking backward in front of her. "No more, 'I'm thinking about it. Maybe,' or 'we'll see.'" "Yes, Brooks," she answered, amused. "I am officially your assistant." He flashed a wide smile, looking almost proud. "And you're not regretting it?" She pretended to think, "Not yet, but the day is just getting started." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're impossible." Sophie winked, gathering her folders. "And you just fell for it." But before they could keep up their flirty banter disguised as jokes, Thompson appeared at the door, holding a red folder. "You too. Conference room." Now, they exchanged glances, raised their eyebrows, and followed. Inside the room, Thompson placed the folder on the table and said with no small talk, "We have a case. Big one. And urgent." Ethan crossed his arms, focused. "Let's hear it." "The Martinez Real Estate Group." Thompson answered. "They're suing our client for breach of contract, and they're asking for a ridiculous amount in damages." Sophie pulled out a chair, opening the folder. "Wow, this is pretty serious." Thompson nodded. "And you two are taking it." Ethan raised an eyebrow, looking at his boss. "The two of us?" "Yes," he confirmed. "The client requested you, but they also asked for Sophie." Silence. Ethan looked at her, she looked at him, and for a second, both almost forgot they were in a serious meeting. "Well," Ethan adjusted his tie. "Let's go win this." Thompson smiled. "That's what I wanted to hear." The courthouse steps were crowded. Lawyers, clients, reporters, everyone moving in every direction. Ethan and Sophie climbed the stairs side by side with steady steps. He adjusted his tie for what felt like the 100th time. She held the folder so tightly it looked like it was her shield against the nerves. "Nervous?" he asked, glancing sideways. "Me?" She took a deep breath. "Just a little." Ethan tried not to laugh. "Well, if it makes you feel better, I am too." Her eyes went wide. "Really?" He smiled. "Seriously, but don't tell anyone." I've got a reputation to protect." They walked into the courtroom. The judge was already seated, and the opposing attorneys were organizing their documents. "Let's go," Ethan said, opening his folder. Total focus. But of course, nothing is ever that simple. As he stood up to hand a document to the judge, Ethan tripped on his own shoelace. The world shifted into slow motion. He stumbled, reached forward, bumped into a chair, hit the file cart, and missed knocking over the judge by just 2 inches. For heaven's sake. The judge grabbed the bench, eyes wide. "Are you all right, mister?" "Brooks?" Ethan, red all the way to his hairline, straightened his jacket, took a deep breath, and answered with as much dignity as he could gather. "Perfectly fine, Your Honor, just testing the durability of the furniture." Sophie, sitting at the assistant table, nearly choked, trying to hold back a laugh. The opposing attorney whispered something to his assistant, both struggling not to laugh, while the judge shook his head, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Very well, let's proceed." Carefully, Ethan took a deep breath, adjusted his folder, glanced at Sophie, who was biting back a full-blown laugh, and muttered, "Not one word." She bit her lower lip, nodding, "Not a word." And even with stumbles and near disasters, the two were flawless. Sharp arguments, solid defense, quick thinking, and a teamwork that felt like it had been built over years. When Sophie stood to present a clause analysis, even the judge adjusted his glasses, clearly impressed. When Ethan countered an opposing argument with such quick reasoning that 2 of the other attorneys exchanged uneasy looks, the victory felt closer and closer. After 3 hours of debate, questioning, and rebuttals, the judge brought down the gavel. "This court rules in favor of the defense. Case closed." The client jumped up, practically bursting with excitement. Ethan and Sophie exchanged a look and a subtle fist bump, small but full of meaning. "We did it," she said, smiling. "We did." He nodded, giving her a wink. And not to brag, but it was beautiful. They walked out of the courtroom side by side, but as soon as they reached the hallway, Ethan stopped. "Sophie," he said, holding her by the arm. She turned, looking him right in the eyes. "What?" It took a deep breath. "I'm not going to wait anymore." "Wait for what?" she asked. But before she could finish the sentence, he pulled her in by the waist. "This," he simply said. And the kiss happened right there in the courthouse hallway, surrounded by passing attorneys, clients, security guards, and, of course, a few co-workers from the office who just happened to be there, clearly hiding behind the column. "I knew it," whispered Nathan, holding his phone, probably recording everything. "I knew it, finally," said one of the assistants, holding her hand over her heart like she was watching a romantic movie. The kiss was the kind that makes the whole world disappear, just them, just that moment, just that feeling bottled up for so long it exploded in every second. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, smiling, with their cheeks burning. "Wow," she whispered, biting her lower lip. "That was..." "Yeah," he smiled. "It was." From behind the column, Nathan added, "Okay, someone hand me a tissue. This is cuter than my favorite movie." The whole office burst into applause, laughter, and cheering. Some even started clapping right there in the courthouse. Ethan, with that mix of smugness and pure charm, looked at Sophie and softly said, "This officially was the best case win of my life." She squeezed his hand, smiling, "And I can guarantee this is one contract I have no plans of canceling." And deep down, they both knew this wasn't just a match in the courtroom. It was a match in the heart. After the most talked about kiss in the office's history, and probably in the courthouse's too, Sophie and Ethan's life didn't exactly go back to what anyone would call normal. Then again, normal was never really their thing. Officially, they were together. Unofficially, it felt like the whole office was more invested in their relationship than in their actual caseload. The next morning, when Sophie arrived, she found a sheet of paper taped to the break room door. "Attention. It is now officially forbidden to root against this couple. Management or maybe just the office gossip team." She laughed, shaking her head as she walked into the building, and of course, there he was, Ethan Brooks, perfect suit, leaning casually against the break room counter, holding 2 coffees. "Morning, intern," he said, smiling. She crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. "Morning, attorney. And at this point, I think you need a new nickname for me." He pretended to think, looked at her from head to toe, and smiled. "Maybe future Mrs. Brooks?" She raised her eyebrows, trying not to laugh. "Easy there, counselor. Don't you think you're getting a little ahead of yourself?" He handed her the coffee with a shrug. "Hey, you never know." Just then, Nathan walked by in the hallway, holding a folder, giving them that classic look of someone who never misses a chance to comment. "Good luck, Sophie," he said, without even slowing down. "Your biggest case now is living with that guy." Ethan turned toward him, pointing. "Objection, Your Honor." Nathan laughed, overruled, and kept walking, still laughing. Sophie shook her head, smiling. He never misses a beat. Ethan took a deep breath, crossed his arms. "Well, to be fair, he's not wrong. I'm a bit of a handful." She smiled, stepping closer, holding her coffee. "And guess what? I love a challenge." He winked. "I know. That's why you picked me." The following days were a perfect mix of love, teasing, and of course, lots of curious glances from coworkers. "So, Sophie, how's it going? Working with your—" The receptionist paused, pretending to search for the word personal boss. "Intense," she answered, holding back a laugh, "but fun." Ethan, overhearing from across the room, crossed his arms and shouted, "And extremely competent, by the way." The whole office burst into laughter. They worked together like two sides of the same coin. Total harmony on the job, total chaos off the clock, constant teasing, stolen glances, shared coffees, and occasionally, a file would mysteriously go missing from her desk just so she'd have to walk over to his office. Total coincidence, of course. What Sophie didn't know was that Ethan had been planning something. Actually, he'd been planning for days. And that afternoon, while she was finishing up a contract review, he showed up at her door, holding a folder. "Hey," he said with that smile she already knew meant, "Here comes trouble." She raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" He waved the folder. "Got a contract for you to look over." "Now?" she asked, frowning. "But we finished everything." "This one's a special contract," he replied. Placing the folder on her desk, curious, she opened it. Inside was a single page, printed on the company's letterhead, with the title, Lifetime Partnership Agreement. Non-transferable and irrevocable. She started reading, holding back a laugh. Clause 1. The parties, hereafter referred to as Ethan Brooks and Sophie Larson, agree to enter a lifetime partnership based on love, laughter, support, and shared coffee. Clause 2. Ethan Brooks commits to providing daily coffee, hugs, kisses, and loving gazes, and agrees to share Friday night pizza, even when he really wants the whole thing to himself. Clause 3. Sophie Larson agrees to remain the whirlwind that shook up and saved Ethan Brooks's life, and of course to be his personal attorney, defender, partner, and the love of his life forever. She looked up, speechless. Ethan opened the folder again and pulled out a small, classic, black ring box. He opened it. Inside, a ring simple, elegant, just like them. He got down on one knee in the middle of the office, yes, with everyone watching. "Sophie, would you be my personal attorney for the rest of my life?" Silence. Everyone held their breath. Nathan, in the corner, clearly recording the whole thing on his phone. Sophie covered her face with her hands, laughing, emotional, and answered, "Objection." She paused for effect. Sustained. The office erupted in cheers, whistles, claps, and laughter. Nathan shouted from the back, "Somebody get the champagne, for heaven's sake." Ethan slid the ring on her finger, stood up, pulled her into his arms, and yes, another kiss, beautiful, full of smiles, surrounded by applause. The wedding day arrived, and it looked like something straight out of a movie. An outdoor garden, beautiful lighting, white flowers, golden details. A sign at the entrance read, "Welcome to the most important contract of Ethan and Sophie's life." Nathan officiated and, of course, didn't miss his chance to say, "Sophie, good luck, because now, my dear, your biggest case is living with this stubborn, proud, annoying lawyer who is completely in love with you." Everyone laughed, teary-eyed. When Ethan looked into her eyes and held her hands, his voice was softer, deeper, more honest than any vow he'd ever made. "Sophie, you came into my life like a whirlwind. You turned everything upside down: my office, my files, my heart, and my life has never been the same. I love you, and if you'll have me, I want it to be forever." She wiped away a tear, smiled, and replied, "Ethan, you were that arrogant, stubborn lawyer I swore I'd never tolerate. And now you're the love of my life. I love you, and yes, Forever. The I do was followed by claps, tears, smiles. And that perfect movie-ending kiss, the reception was exactly their style. Fun, full of jokes, silly dances, favorite songs, and of course coffee on every table with little signs that read, "Official toast of this contract, coffee plus love," and right there on the dance floor, swaying awkwardly, laughing, teasing each other, they knew that, in the end, the most important case of their lives would always be loving each other, and unlike any other contract, this one had no expiration date. S.